Maine. This is Chuck Ellis. You're watching the Muddy Waters Podcast Live, special edition with Richard, the Unquirer, also known as Maine X Community.
Hello.
How's it going, Richard?
Good. I'm waking up. I think I have the cold or something that's been going around.
Yeah. It happens. So thanks for coming on again. We always have really fun conversations. I don't know if we're going to be talking about World War III or the Civil War this time, but a lot of interesting stuff happening in politics in general. But more like some of it's more national. But since the last time I think we've been on, we have had another person enter the race for the U.S. Senate on the Democrat side. In what is the guy's name?
I can't even remember. They call him the beer guy.
The beer guy. Well, he is the founder or co-founder of Maine Beer Company. And it just seems like it's a really interesting year, obviously, with Senate. The Susan Collins seat up in the U.S. Senate, as well as the governor's race, and the fact that the House is basically open season here, and you've got LePage running against Jared Golden in CD2. It just seems like this is a really exciting year because everybody's declaring like way ahead of I think when they would normally declare that they're running. There are still, I think, 4 or 5 different gubernatorial candidates on the Republican side that have yet to declare, that are expected to declare. And on the U.S. Senate side, on the Democrats, we have Graham Plattner, that other guy from Maine Beer Company. His name's
Dan Kleben.
Claben? Yeah. Claben. I'm going with Claben, but yeah. Who knows if I'm right? Correct me if you will. Maybe I'll get some of them to come on the podcast. We'll see. But I did get an independent to come on yesterday, and Senator Rick Bennett, who's running as independent for governor. But yeah, really interesting time in Maine politics. I think it's going to be one of the busiest years in a lot of ways that we will see probably for, I would say, the next 12 years. Maybe no, that's probably accurate. Yeah.
I mean, I can't picture. I mean, it's hard to predict the future, but
yeah.
I mean, there's nothing. I mean, I'm a lot older than you. I can't remember anything that's been this wild in Maine politics. And maybe someone might be able to tell us, but I'm just never. Like when LePage was actually as governor, there's some spicy moments, but it dwarfs everything that we're going through right now.
Yeah, well, and a big part of it is that, again, it's an open seat for governor. So when I say 12 years, I guess I'm wrong with that. So it's like the time where you have a Senate seat that matches up with a governor, a governor's seat at the beginning of their term. I think that makes it a really big, election.
Yeah, and I mean, right now they're talking about Maine election nationally. Like, I'm actually on Reddit right now. I like to follow like what the lefties are saying, but like r/politics is actually a pretty big subreddit. Like, probably one of the biggest ones that are on there when it comes to politics. And I constantly see Maine popping up more than any state that's relatively close to the same size. Like, they were just talking about Janet Mills, and they're talking about Graham Plattner. And a lot of people, a lot of the lefties don't like that beer guy. So there's a whole subreddit based on him in r/Maine too, and they don't like him at all. Yeah.
Why?
They said,
why?
Well, right here, this is where I got his name from.
Is it because he's not a communist and you have to be?
Yeah, that's literally what they're saying. They said he's opposed to organized labor, unions, etc., and he's not a socialist. They don't want him. Right.
Wow.
Yeah, like this. I mean, I can send you the link if you want to read through some of the stuff. Like, they hate this guy. He's not left enough. He's too much of a moderate Democrat for them.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is what's really interesting. So I was having a conversation yesterday with Rick Bennett, and I kind of just made this comment to him because it's just true. And I was, I didn't have him on the podcast to go after him, right? Like, I feel like part of the purpose of the podcast exists to give people an opportunity to hear from people. And I did want to ask him a few questions on some issues where I think we disagree. But that the purpose wasn't to like go after him, and will remain to be more about informing people on what people say they're about, and then also like sometimes questioning that to a degree in a civil discourse kind of way, because it's a lost art in our culture and we need to bring it back. However, like one of the things that I think is true, and this is what I was saying to him, is that like we live in a very divided time, right? And basically, right now we have two options. I think we were talking yesterday, and I said the same thing. But like, basically, we have, you can like you're being given a choice between two opposing worldviews. One is what I would call classic historical American. And by that, no, I don't mean racist, the crazy lefties who are trying to redefine everything and say that if you say that anything in the past was good, then that means you're okay with a lot of the horrible things. America had its problems, but the core values that were part of the founding of this country, those core values actually are the things that ended up leading to women's suffrage and the abolition of slavery and equal rights for people. Based on all those things were included in the original documents. The Constitution is part of what laid the foundation for this. So historic American values of work hard, take care of your family, those values are good, and that's one of the worldviews you're being given a chance for is historic American values. The other option is communism, right? And like, I don't know. So like, how can you be in the middle? And
you
like,
can't. If you're right now, if you're milk toast or you're trying to be independent, you're getting slaughtered, right? Like no one, because everyone's looking for a champion to fight for their ideology. We no longer, like you said last night, we no longer share the same vision of the future. Right. So if that's the situation, the framework, you're not going to find. It's hard to have someone that simultaneously believes in your ideology and a communist ideology. It just doesn't match, because if you're diametrically opposed, you're not going to find a middle ground. We're in a battle. I think that I was actually listening to a historian years ago, and they said that when a society splits apart and no longer shares the same vision for the future, that there's never been a situation where there hasn't been civil conflict or separation. So like sometimes like maybe a country splits apart and it becomes this country and this country. But if you don't share the same vision in the future, all you're going to do is go back and forth and play tug of war. If your guy gets in power, they dismantle everything of the other side, and you just go back and forth until there's actually conflict or separation of the two states, right? And
which is just crazy to just figure out how we got here.
So quickly, too. So quickly.
Seemingly so quickly, but the foundation was laid 60 years ago, right? Like that's the crazy thing about the Democrat ideology that's kind of slowly worked its way out. I say the Democrat ideology, it's a globalist, somehow globalist, and also like communist. There's a lot of like forces that are working together on the other side. I think groups are using socialism to gain power, not necessarily anyway, and manipulate people and all that other kind of stuff, which I guess makes sense with communism, and you have oligarchies and things like that. But it's just it feels like it's happened all of a sudden because we weren't paying attention, right? But like the reality is, like, they took over higher education back in like I think it was the 60s, and have slowly infiltrated every level of our infrastructure. And now now that they're actually, we saw them essentially weaponize that power of, being in charge of all the institutions in COVID. And that woke so many people up, and now people are ready to fight and people are pushing back, which is the only reason we have a chance. Like if in a sense, if COVID hadn't happened, would they have slowly crept further? And it was because they tried to leap forward that people were awakened. That's a good question. That's
so. Did you ever see my my post about a year ago from the Whatever podcast? It's like one of the largest podcasts that's on YouTube.
No.
So, and what's funny is that they bring on leftist women. That the whole purpose. I just sent you a link to it. I spent $100 to ask a question. Which side would they fight on if China declared war on America? And a lot of them, they either refused to answer. They admitted that they would side with China. But I sent you a link. It's actually a really important clip. And I purposely asked this. Yeah.
Let's play it. Let's play it. All right, here we go.
And I spent $100 to have this question asked.
China, or would you stand with the United?
You can hear that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ask the panel if China declared war under the moral authority of dismantling whiteness and decolonization directives. Would you side with China or would you stand with the United States of America?
That's a wild question, but fuck it, we'll do it.
Wildly awesome. It's a wildly awesome question.
So, would you side with China or would you stand with the United States of America? Starting with you.
I don't do politics.
You got to pick one, though.
No.
Okay.
What was the full question? Because there was like, I mean, it's not just would you side with China or United States.
Yeah,
like,
here, I'll pull it back up again, and I'll have you read it for us. Go ahead.
Ask the panel if China declared war under the moral authority of dismantling whiteness and decolonization directives. Would you side with China or would you side with the United States of America? Okay.
China or the United States?
Can you reword it? I wanted to read it one more time.
Okay, China declares war, and the pretext, the justification for the war is they want to dismantle whiteness, and they think America's a colonizer. And for this reason, they're declaring war, China declaring war against the United States. Do you stand with China or do you stand with the United States?
Oh, would it be okay if I just don't answer this one?
Are you you don't want to offend the CCP or?
I'm sorry, I have a serious question. What is whiteness?
Honestly. From the progressive standpoint or the actual standpoint?
What is the question asking?
Yeah, so the question's asking from a progressive standpoint. Whiteness would be the idea that white men and women are privileged over every other class, and the reason that they are is because throughout history, inside of the United States, everything has been favorable towards them, and so they have a leg up over all other ethnicities that they wouldn't ordinarily have if it wasn't due to colonialism and essentially white power.
I would stand with China.
Wow.
And since then, right? So I had developed that question a while ago because I wanted to ask leftists this, and I started paying for super chats with really popular YouTubers, and people started asking that question. And I started clipping them and putting them on X and other social media because it's a very important question that no one asks. And I just recently did a poll, like, what do you think the Democrat Socialists in America would side with, China or America? And everyone goes, yeah, China. But the question is actually much deeper than that we actually do have a lot of people that would side with China under this moral framework. They're being taught that in schools. So the framework that we need to dismantle whiteness and decolonize the West, if you get brought up with that, and then there's an actual force, we'll call it the Axis, and they decide we're going to declare war on the West, you're going to have millions of Americans join forces with them to actually fight against America as a country. And there's a lot of people that when asked this question, a lot of lefties, when asked directly, they go yes without hesitation. They know exactly some of them know exactly word for word what we're asking. Other ones, they go, I don't understand these terms. But the ones that are ideologically captured or really in deep with this, they know exactly what I'm asking. And if they're willing to answer it, some of them will just say, I won't answer. I refuse to answer. They won't say America. They just stay quiet. Other ones, when they're bold enough, they're like, yes, we'd side with China. This is American citizens that would actually fight against their own country. And we've had so many people admit to this.
Yeah, I'm just I don't know. It's one of those things where like it doesn't surprise me on the one hand, but it also like does. You know what I mean? Like so because like I want people to be smarter and to be more, I guess, more sensible and be better at paying attention to what's actually going on in the world. But the reality is people are not. You know, so many people are, as you said, ideologically captured by by this crap. It's so fascinating how people I had this conversation with a friend of mine who I think is a little bit more he's definitely not far left, and because we're able to have a civil conversation in which he listens to what I had to say, right? So he's more left of center than I am, but I don't think he's like super lefty, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you'll find out. You'll find out. Trust me, I got duped by a lot of friends too.
Well, I think based on the conversation, like I think that's where I'm kind of like seeing that I think there's some hope here.
Well, try this. I set up a question for anyone. Okay. I'll let you finish. No, I'll let you finish.
I was just going to say, yeah. So the conversation ended up being about whiteness, and like we had a conversation about like I wouldn't say it was about whiteness, but about the fact that like DEI is not good. Hiring people for some reason other than that they are qualified for the position doesn't do them any good, because either you're setting them up to fail or you're setting the business up to fail, or both, right? Like the reality is like it's when you treat someone in a way like that, you're being racist against them.
But that's the feature.
You should. I understand that that's the feature, but this is the point that I was making to him, right? Is that this is not good. It's not healthy. It's not actually helping this person advance. It's pretending to help, and so we got into this like further into the fact that like, okay, so why is it that people have this idea that simply by being white that we automatically have opportunities that people of color don't have, right? And so like. The part of the reason I talk about this is like, I mean, if you look at like the colonization of America, the first group of slaves that were here were not.
See, you're falling into the trap. You're falling into the trap that I fell into, and all of us fall into. You're engaging with the premise of their framework, and you're being forced to defend your position. They don't even genuinely. They're not doing this so that you can create a set of arguments and you can convince.
I'm not talking to a Marxist.
Okay.
I'm talking
Just
to somebody who has hope, for whom there is hope.
Okay, well then I'll play the side of the leftist then, and I'll give you an answer. And so you're saying whiteness. Do you know what the term whiteness means? It's two things.
Don't really. Yeah.
The term whiteness actually got created by a black Marxist, Du Bois, in America in the late 50s. He then traveled to China to the CCP, and he actually gave them a breakdown of what whiteness is. It's actually skin tone and capitalism merged together. So whiteness that's where the term like blackness and whiteness came from. You can look all this up. The CCP didn't do anything with it for a long time. They then incorporated it and realized that it would be a good tool and weapon that they could use globally to get all the other cultures against America. So whiteness is when you merge, it's intersectionality between your skin tone and then capitalism. So you can actually dismantle your own whiteness by getting rid of capitalism, right? So if you're a white person that isn't a capitalist, quote unquote fascist, then you've actually got rid of your whiteness. You've decentered it. You've actually dismantled it. So like if you look at like that they have murals on campuses that say dismantle whiteness. And it's not racist because the actual term whiteness is not specifically about your skin tone. That's how they get around it.
That's how they sneak around it. No, yeah, right? No.
But then, okay. So if you say that there's a whiteness or whiteness problem, and I'm saying it from their perspective, globally.
Well, when you say from their perspective, you're talking about Marxists and people who have bought into that ideology.
And then
I don't think I'm focused. Those people are lost and hopeless.
Okay, no. They're not lost. Okay, they're manipulating
until they have an awakening.
No. I'm trying to frame this. Picture this: they're the enemy. They know they're lying, and they're manipulating, creating a framework of moral authority to control the middle people, which would be the normie Democrats, normie Republicans, just normies in general. So when they say, and they look to, let's just say a Hispanic that's in South America, and they say, whiteness is capitalist and they're privileged and they live in America and they're exploiting a country. How do you refute that?
Me?
Yeah, that's our argument. The leftists will say this to it.
I don't engage with insanity. It's ridiculous. Like the premise is ridiculous, and I think sometimes there's a passage in the scripture that says, "Don't answer a fool according to his folly, or he will become wise in his own eyes." Like I don't like engaging in that question. It's not an honest question, and I'm not interested in having dishonest conversation and trying to speak honestly to somebody who's not in touch with reality. And this is my overall point.
Which
This is the fact, right? The fact of the matter is, being white did not give me an advantage over somebody who is black.
What about being American?
Life, right?
What about being American?
Yeah, being an American, yeah, sure. We have opportunities, and that is not based on anything other than where I was born, right? And so, like the reality, but nations have to have laws and nations have to have borders. Otherwise, we devolve into chaos, and it's absolutely insane. So this is a country I was born in. This is where I live. Did I earn it? No, but it's here. This is the reality. I'm not going to feel bad about it. I'm going to feel grateful for the fact that I was blessed by God to be here. And yeah,
did American government exploit and overthrow governments, and then we benefited from it?
Every country is trying to do that to every other country. So it's ridiculous, right? It's like saying, do governments do bad things?
Yeah.
Oh, right. My government did bad things. But if you look at the net result of America being in existence, it's far more positive than any other country to this point in the history of the world. And so like you can complain about America, you can like the amount of prosperity, not only did America get wealthy, but we made the world wealthy at the same time. So like I don't give in. It's ridiculous to try and suggest
the Marxists. Well, no, but you're not wrong. So I don't disagree with anything you're saying. But so the Marxist plan from the Marxist view is to actually get that worldview into all the minds of the people around the world, right? So South America, Central America, Africa. And then what you do is you convince them these are all privileged people, they've exploited you. And so you're doing a global Marxist revolution against the West.
Yep.
Do you agree with that? That's what's being done right now.
I think I definitely think that's part of the agenda of the CCP, and you could argue technically Russia is not communist, and there's a lot of people on the conservative right that seem to like Putin and Russia now. I don't know why.
Did I ever tell you about how I created like a question to wake my friends' parents up, or my friends who are parents up? So we'd be sitting around fires, and this is about 10 years ago, maybe 8 to 10 years ago, while this was all emerging. And I couldn't convince people in the least bit. It was impossible. You could sit there and tell them forever back then, and no one would believe you. They're just like, this is insane. So I tested this out, and I would go to, like, when their child came in the room, I would say, can you point to the cisgendered white male of privilege who owes society reparations? And every one of their kids pointed to their father immediately. The father had no idea what I had just said, didn't know the words. The kid knew every single time who I was speaking about. We did this when we were at a campground to a New York couple with their kid there. We did it to multiple friends of ours I know in real life. And they'll back me up. And to that point, those people actually have gone to protest now, like the March Against Mills. They showed up and they were like, Richard, you are right about everything. But I spoke to their kids and said, point to the cisgendered white male of privilege that owes society reparations. And they didn't even hesitate, and they pointed to their father, right? Yeah. And this was started 8 years ago. So I didn't have time to sit there and spend endless hours trying to convince my friends and family members that this was happening. But I needed to create like an execution line, a set of code, I guess, to just say to a kid to show that I could speak a language that the parents had no idea was going on. And this is being taught worldwide, in whether it's Africa, whether it's in Mexico, South America. This ideology is being taught worldwide, globally, against the West.
Yeah, it's I mean, again, the whole nature of what's going on in our world today is pretty wild. And where were you seeing this? Because I got what area? Is it here in Maine, or was this somewhere else?
Wait, what are you asking me?
like where you were asking those questions about cisgender white male of privilege who owes reparations.
No. So I would be at like a friend's gathering, and we'd be sitting around a
But here,
fire.
this is what I'm saying. Like this is going on here in Maine. And what school districts?
One would be Waterboro. The other one was a New York couple that was at a campground in Sebago that I had met. The other one would be Saco, and then maybe. But the thing is like this is if you think that this is not being taught nationwide, not even just nationwide, all throughout the West, this is so the line. What I was trying to do is create a line that every kid, if you ask any child that line, they know exactly whether they agree with it or not. They know exactly what you're saying. Do you know what the words I just said to you were?
Yeah, I do. But
okay, well, what does it mean if you break it down? No, but if you break it down, like this is so important. Knowing the ideology, the reason people go,
so cisgender is somebody who is of the same gender, quote unquote, as their sex. So you're born a male, you believe you're a male. That makes you, or you're born a female, and that makes you, and you you agree that you are a female. That makes you cisgender. I learned this in part because of a girl I dated, and I noticed that she had these pronouns or whatever on her Facebook page. This is long before anybody else was talking about pronouns, and I was like, what in the world is this? And so I had to do research and look it up, and I was like, oh, we are not aligned. And that relationship ended not too long after that. But anyway, so it was cisgender. What was it?
Straight. The next one would be straight.
Straight is somebody who is heterosexual.
Yeah, and then the next one's white.
Is skin tone. Yeah,
and the next one's male.
Yep. Which
of privilege, right? And then who owes society reparations, right?
Yeah. Yep. So cisgender shouldn't exist, but
no, it's not. But the kids are.
I know. I'm just
this, right?
They're learning this in the schools, which is. Yeah,
because the actual idea of reparations doesn't just go to skin tone. It actually goes to because ultimately they want to create a hierarchy where taxes and money redistribution is based on skin tone differential, gender, and sexual orientation. So they say that like the LGBTQ community has been oppressed by like churches and the religious right for so many years, and that there has to be forms of reparation. Same thing with like Black people, and we don't have to go into all those details. So what I did was I wanted to find a way to create a set of words that the average person go, what the heck did he just say? And how come my child knows exactly what he said and knew instantly how to respond to it? And trust me, people were like, they were listening after that. Like this, you just had someone speak a series of words that you had no clue what was even just said, but the child did. And this would work for like 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds. And the problem is if this set of framing is known universally worldwide, play that out 10 years, 20 years down the road. You're then going to have people that are in positions of power in Mexico, in South America, in Africa, and they're going to go, that set of framing fits the narrative of the Democrat Socialists, where we need to have redistribution of wealth, and it has to come from white people and trickle down.
Yeah.
And how does the white left evade that? As long as they get rid of their gender identity. So if the moment you become non-binary, you become this new protected class, right? And that's like an ally to those movements. And that's why the Democrat Social, if you ever see someone with they, them pronouns, be careful, because those generally know exactly what they're doing, and they're not the useful idiots. They're actually the Marxists that are part of the collective.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I mean, some of them are just confused, I think.
But they are, but generally,
right.
I
think that like, but they're definitely like, whether they're intellectually bought in or they're just part of the machine, they're completely bought into that ideology, obviously. Yeah.
Well, and can you see a future where there's not a conflict with those? And so the purpose of disseminating this type of ideology worldwide is that the Democrat Socialists,
no, you're good.
The left, they don't have enough physical force within the country, so they have to get their allies from north and south, which would be Canada, right? Canada fully is aligned with all of this ideology, not all the individuals, but the government. And then same with Mexico. So you have the new cartel. Have you been paying attention with the cartels? I think it's called the New Generation Cartel.
No.
It's actually a cartel that's blended with Marxism and being a cartel, right? So there's actually been multiple people on Joe Rogan recently and over the past year that are from Mexico that are speaking about this. That there's this the largest growing cartel is actually one that's blended with Marxism that's interconnected with the CCP in China. And what they do is they've gone through and they've taken over the schools and they're incorporating Marxism into the actual cartel, and they've become more ideological than just like I guess physical enforcement. And they're more focused on a revolution. The president of Mexico is actually a revolutionary that is a Marxist revolutionary that did work throughout South America, and she was actually propped up by the Marxist cartels.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's you paint a very gloomy picture. I do think there's hope. Is one of the things that I'm going to say. But I definitely think that like there's a growing movement. And what's really interesting is I watched a movie within the last year called about Che Guevara, who was the revolutionary that was credited to a large degree with Cuba becoming a communist nation, and then he had a plan of turning all the other South American and Central American countries communist as well. And he ended up not doing so well in Bolivia, and the United States in that situation. Got involved and helped put him down, which is interesting. But the tone of the movie is definitely one that's very much more positive about Marxism, if you ask me, right? And like what's interesting is like if you don't actually like, there's a reason that people buy into this ideology. Obviously, I think regardless of the specifics of like the anti-white nature of it, like Marxism in general is this idea of like I think a lot of it comes from the concern for the worker and like the average person, that there are some people who are getting rich and they see it as being at the expense of
it's not
the worker. I'm not talking about the people who are in control, but I'm talking about the reason that it is attractive to people. Like, and if they see it and these people come around, these manipulative people.
It's hard, and you have to reset your brain. So, like, have you ever read the Communist Manifesto?
I have not.
It's I just call it the Book of Hatred. The Communist Manifesto is an illusion. It's a guidebook concealed as an economic model, but it's actually a guidebook for people that don't have institutional power and force to actually create institutional power to overthrow their governments, to seize power. And so, like, it's tough because what happens is, yes, you get the people that first bubble up and they go, oh, it's about economic model. Anyone that's intelligent that starts reading through the stuff just realizes that it just teaches you how to pit different groups of people against each other and use that conflict, that struggle session, to seize power in that situation. And it's always designed to create an authoritarian tyrant figure or a single party rule. And you start reading it and you go, oh, it's so obvious. So anyone that starts to dive in at first, you are right. They're like, oh, this is about workers' rights. Kind of all of society is tricked by that illusion. Everything about Marxism is a lie from the beginning. Everything is a lie from the very, very beginning. All of it. The moment people get at all within the Marxism ideology.
And I agree with you. What I was trying to comment on is like why I think people buy into it. That's where I was.
I think they're lying to you. I think that.
I know that they're lying. I agree with you. Like that's not the point. The point is like why I think, because I'm watching. I remember like I'm very much a capitalist. In fact, I'd love you to anybody who's interested to go to muddywaters.us, and we have Clearstream Coffee Company available. Muddywaters.us. Go to shop. You can buy coffee. Whole bean, French press, whatever roast you want. Tons of options. I'm definitely a capitalist, very much a capitalist, and free markets and the communism is bad. It has never worked out well for the average person. But the pitch is always that there are these people that are making money off of the backs of the poor, and if we just we need to liberate the poor. And again, the end result is what I sometimes say. I actually said this when I had Rafael Macias on the podcast, that like when the socialists basically, what they offer you essentially is communism. But is it true that in a capitalistic society that if you start with money, it's easier to be successful than if you don't start with money? Yeah, it is. If you make the right decisions, if you're making wise decisions, it's easy if you have money to make money. That's true. I would actually say that that's also true in a communistic society. So that's
what's the definition of capitalism? Can you create your own definition of capitalism? Most people can't. I can ask everyone on the right and left, and no one even has a definition for it. I have one.
Yeah, I mean, I have one. I can come up with one. I mean, capitalism is basically what the idea of free market economics, where I can freely buy and sell goods at whatever price I choose, whatever price we kind of meet in the marketplace, and I decide how much I'm willing to pay. People decide how much they're willing to sell things for, and we're able to exchange goods in a way that's free, where the government is not interfering with the supply and demand. The government's job is not to invade and engage in economics outside of. I'm a version of capitalist that believes in antitrust, because I do think that if somebody gains enough of the wealth of a nation, so to speak, that they can use capitalism, use their financial position to basically harm society, is the short version. So I do believe.
But no, do you have a definition? That wasn't a definition. That was a description.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay, so
you're going for something very targeted in every.
No. Well, a description. I don't have. Descriptor is way different. Yeah. So it's just a free exchange between two or more individuals. That's what the description. But when you explain that to people, this is important. This isn't just me just saying random things. So what happens is, if you want to have a conversation with a leftist or maybe your friend, right? So you ask them, what's the definition of capitalism? A lot of them haven't thought about it. And then when you sit there and be like, well, the definition of capitalism is literally the free exchange between two or more individuals. You can ask them, you know what? I don't care what your policies are. Would you still preserve the free exchange between two or more individuals? And if they start getting wormy and going, well, no, I don't know. I don't know if I believe that. That's actually where you're going to find your separation, the focal points between you and the other person where you disagree. You're going to find some people saying, no, I don't believe that there should be a free exchange between individuals, right? And so the more socialist a country is, the more they get involved between that free exchange.
Right. And agreed. And so I think going back to what I was the point that I was making about the difference between one of the major anecdotal differences between socialism, capitalism, right, is in socialism. I mean, in capitalism, I would say again that I think if you start with money, is it easy to make money? Yes. However, it's possible for anybody at any level, even somebody who grows up very poor, to be able to rise and make something of themselves. Whereas, so you have some potential, we'll call it quote unquote inequity, although I don't really care for that term, in a capitalistic society. But in a socialistic society, you have shared poverty.
No, okay. So I am glad you're going here. How do you rise up in socialism/communism? You can. You have
to be connected with the oligarchs.
Your obedience.
Earn the favor of the oligarchs.
Yep, obedience to the single party rule. So what it is obedience rises you up the ranks rather than meritocracy. So you have two different systems. One, the obedience to the state will actually rise you up. And the other one is meritocracy. So it tends to be disobedient. Disobedient people tend to thrive in a capitalist society because they break outside the norm. Obedient people still can, but they're not elevated as much. Society is now moving in the direction of favoring the obedient people. So, right. And that's where we're at. If you look at Canada, Europe, UK, they've moved more into the socialism Marxist aspect. America is one of the last places alongside Argentina that actually has levels of free exchange between individuals. They're losing that all throughout the West right now. And when you actually look at the world, and you start looking at the countries that who actually restricts this, there's not a lot left that's actually capitalistic at all. Like,
Yeah.
so, and that's actually happened in your lifetime. If you would go back 10, 20 years ago, Canada, UK, and Europe actually looked vastly different. And in a very short time, they're now actually resembling the same ideology as like China and South American, Central American countries, more so than they do America. So we're almost on an island at this point with very few allies that share the same ideological view. So when you're thinking of, like, let's just say hypothetical civil war, the right is going to have to make up for its lack of international allies, because ideologically the left has more international allies than we do by a large scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting to look at it. I mean,
Well, this is where we fall into, we're in a very, very challenging situation worldwide, and why it's so important. And this is like, so, obviously my wife is Rwandan and lives in Kenya, and like, given where I'm at in life, I theoretically could, there are arguments that would suggest that I could retire to Kenya now, right? And why not do that? Right now, a couple reasons. One, I feel like God has put a calling on my life, and I've got to be obedient. And that calling is to engage in the political process. I don't know that it's necessarily going to stop what's coming from happening, but my hope is that. But the other piece of it is, like, again, as I said earlier, like, the reality is America has been far more net positive to the world than negative, right? There are some negatives. We have done some bad things. It's absolutely true, whether it be the American slave trade, or really, is, by the way, just
everyone did that.
Calling it the American slave trade is dishonest. So anybody, so even saying that is dishonest. It was an international slave trade. Everybody had slaves. And everybody was exploiting Africa. But even aside from that, slavery was common for almost all of human history, and currently is still common. There's tons of sex slavery right now. So if you're anti-slavery, you should be focusing on how do we how do we support governments?
They don't care. They don't actually care about slavery.
I understand. Yeah. I understand. Like, but this is my point.
Why do we pretend to? But why do we even bother talking about it?
Because I care. That's why I talk about it.
But nobody, I know, and I'm not.
And to call out their hypocrisy.
But no one cares. They're about power.
Yeah.
They don't care. You could sit there and prove a million times
again,
over.
When you say I'm going to take a little bit of a problem with the way that you're saying this, because
a
lot of these people do not actually know what they believe. They don't even understand that
they want power.
They have been hoodwinked by a group of people, because, like, not all of them are going to get power. Like, in order for communism to work, in order for socialism to work, you need so many people to buy into it. Yes, some of them think they're going to receive power through it. That's the motivation. People are selfish. They're going to act in their own selfish motivation, right? Other people they buy into it, right? And if everybody thought, if everybody was actually going to be able to gain power from it, there's not enough power to go around. That's actually the part of the problem for, so the reality is most of them are hoodwinked, partly maybe out of a desire for power, but they're hoodwinked into believing this. And so, I think it's much more complex in the internal. And I do think that there is some potential to, there's two different approaches, but depending on the person, right? And this is where people need to, understand who they're talking to. But, like, depending on the person, there is opportunity, I think, to highlight for them the hypocrisy in their worldview. And I think that does have the potential to wake some people up. And some people are just not going to see it. For some people, we just need to destroy the enemy. We need to destroy the Marxist movement in order, here in America first, and then maybe further afield. But we need to destroy the movement and decimate it in order for those people to let go of what they bought into, right? So there are some people that I do think that we have the potential to convince and to highlight things for. And I wouldn't just say that they, because again, they is the people who are really in charge, I think.
Yeah, or I think they is the collective, right?
Right.
So you have you have the two cells.
They, them.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, exactly. They want they want a collectivist pronoun. The whole point of communism is to get rid of the idea of individualism. But then here's the problem. People on the right spend so much time trying to come up with arguments about the chaotic craziness, and the left actually doesn't even care. They never cared. And I used to get tricked into, I'd sit there and create these well thought out arguments. And I'm like, okay, defeat this. And then they just switch to something else. They just won't even engage because they never cared. They're looking at you as an enemy. Even if you could prove without a doubt that America's been a net positive to the world, they don't care. They do not care. And then I've almost never, I've seen so much energy put into trying to convince them to like see reason. And I've maybe 1 out of 100,000 will actually join our side. Look, find a random lefty or Democrat that someone's convinced. They don't exist.
Well, there are a number of people that are actually in our movement that fall into that category. So,
but it's not because we know anyone convinced them. It's because they saw because everyone sees what they're. Well,
I'm not arguing that point. I'm saying that there is hope for people, and I do think that the conversations that individuals had with them probably were part of the influence.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm black pilled when it comes to like convincing.
You're very, very black pilled, apparently.
Well, I just look at it as like I actually just see us fighting this battle against this ideology.
Well,
and
so
I see our side.
Let's talk about convincing people, right?
Okay.
So like when we're like you don't convince people in a vacuum. You don't convince people in a conversation, right? Like these are things that happen over time through conversation and through relationships. And I do see progress in those categories.
With who?
What do you mean?
Like everyone that I've known is tell you right. Like it's so you have people that exist that are normies and they'll go whoever has power. So like, let's just say the left has power. They're going to side with the left. The right has power, they'll side with the right. Then you have people that actually care about the ideological battles, and those ones you can't actually convince. So I would say that
convince is part of the problem. Again, I don't think that's kind of what I'm pushing back against. Is like it's not about convincing; it's about presenting, giving people an opportunity, giving people more information, having a conversation that could be one of the things that is used in whether it's in their line of reasoning or whatever it is to help them see the truth. Like, no, you are not going to convince anyone. But you can be evidence that is used by them in their own process to realize the error of their ways.
Okay, well, let's just say
does that make sense?
Yeah, but I feel like the thing is, I think you're falling into the trap that a lot of people on our side fell into for many years, and we're realizing not to waste our energy with it. Yes,
well,
okay, I can go to someone and I can show without a doubt that Obama put people in cages, right? And that he deported people at a higher rate than Trump in a lot of levels. I can literally go to someone and prove without a doubt, and they do not care. I've seen so many YouTubers going to people on streets, and they can literally present the evidence in front of them, and they don't care. Why? Because they're just not on your side. No matter the amount of evidence you show them, they will never ever care. Even if you, without a doubt, right? Like just with that fact alone, they will. You can prove.
Again, here's an argument against that.
Okay.
Have you seen Charlie Kirk? You heard of this guy?
Yeah, I watch him usually like maybe 2-3 times a week.
Right. He's doing it. He's actually having conversations with people, and unless these people
are
just generally, he is not everyone. Not everyone. Some people are being convinced.
You're missing.
So you're saying that these are staged?
No, I'm going to tell you where you're missing it out. Is Charlie Kirk effective? Yes, but it's based on power. So what he's doing is he's providing the tools and weapons for the people that already side with him, that have been silenced, like the students that already agree with him, to find ways to actually combat the leftists. The leftists that come up to the mic, even if you don't want to call them leftists, the kids that come to the mic that 99.9% of the time oppose them, they never get convinced. They just get beat down and silenced with the arguments. And so what he's doing is he's going to these campuses. He's teaching kids on his ideological side the tools and weaponry to defeat the opponents in the classroom and to give them bravery out there. And by doing that, he's getting more and more to kind of come together. I don't think that, yes, you might have 1 out of 100 when you deal with people that come forward and say, you know what? I was wrong. And yes, I'm sure that exists, but that is not the normal. It just doesn't happen. When you actually understand.
I think that you're underestimating the impact of what he's doing. And I like what's interesting is there's one of the guys that I know locally who is a conservative now, very strong conservative at this point, is somebody who used to, as he put it, when he was in his teenage years as a like really strong leftist, he used to hate watch Ben Shapiro. That's what he called it. He used to hate watch Ben Shapiro. And ultimately, like over time, realized that there were some good arguments that were being made that couldn't be refuted. And over time, he actually that was the first part of the process whereby he realized that he believed in the wrong ideology. And I think that like that's the thing that like I think when we have conversations about like whether we're going to convince people. Well, individually in one situation, we're not going to convince people, but there's a body of evidence, and over time, there are people who will be convinced and will shift. And part of and I think we have a part to play in that. I do think that generally speaking, as I said earlier, because I go back to what I said because I think it's relevant, is I think there are people out there that can be convinced, that can realize the error of their ways. I think there are other people that the only way that can happen for them is if the system is destroyed and demolished, right? So that group of people can only if their whole system falls apart will they and we win essentially, will they abandon that ideology. So, I do think that there is value in conversation, but to your overall point, though, I don't think that this is where we should spend the vast majority of our time is trying to convince people who are communists not to be communists. Like, I don't think that's going to be very effective. I think we need to focus on the people who are not communists and helping them realize the situation, the world in which we live, and how dire the situation is. So I go back to again what I was trying to say earlier too about like why, like, okay, yeah, America's done. We got sidetracked when I said America's done some bad things and we talked about slavery. But the point that I was getting at there is that, like,
when you
America.
talk, I don't believe in that framework, like that, the way that you set that narrative. I don't speak it that way at all.
What are you talking
because
about?
you're saying like you recognize that America's done some bad things when America
So that's a sub point. Don't get stuck on that. Like we don't need to. We can get. We've got sidetracked enough. So my point that I was getting at is that like America is the last hope at the moment, right?
I agree.
That's the point. Is like we need to. Most of the rest of the West has fallen, and in China has its tentacles all throughout Africa, and hope in eternally. As a Christian, I would say hope only lies in Christ. But in terms of this world, unless until another nation somehow rises, America is the bastion of hope for freedom, and not over against tyranny. It is the only hope that we currently have on the horizon, to be able to combat, especially the tyranny that is presented by communist China, who is ruthless in its tyranny. And so that's why I'm here, and that's why it's so important that we engage in the fight, and try to stop the radical left, who are communists. And
maybe that's where my framing should. Maybe I should frame it more that I believe that we should spend more energy instead of convincing people, arming our side with the tools necessary to defeat the opponents, right? Because like generally now, if people are paying attention, they pick their sides, and for the most part, and they're willing to give certain concessions, like, okay, you know what, maybe we're wrong about this, but they'll accept it. So I just don't. I think that we were going to go through phases where the first decade of phase is almost like the information phase, where you have people like Ben Shapiro and everyone kind of saying this is what's happening, explaining to the public. Now we're in the new phase where it's going to be the organizers and the leaders and the people pushing back against it. Because I mean, one of the reasons why I voted for Trump was not because of his. I think the reason I voted for Trump was different than what most MAGA people voted for Trump. I was very anti-Marxist for a long time, and most of the moves I've seen Trump do has been specifically done against Marxism, right?
Yep.
Oh, sorry, I'll leave it.
No, what were you saying?
Oh, yeah. So most like Trump I was very skeptical, or I was very cautious about voting for Trump if he actually knew what was going on. And all the moves that he's made has actually been reinforcement of tackling Marxism. Whether it's the countries he's pushing back against, going after certain cities, it's not just Democrat versus Republican. He's specifically going against the actual Marxist socialist aspects that are the problem, right? Going into the cities and taking out like the really, really extreme far left, going after the cartels, which are working with communist China, going after communist China, trying to tackle the fact that Canada is starting to cozy up with China and the communists, sending J.D. Vance to actually go to Europe and saying, you guys are not acting like the West. You're actually attacking free speech, right? So like his administration is more attacking things that I believe are the problem than I think that he's doing for the MAGA people. And what's funny is that like I've seen people that are MAGA or Republican kind of distance themselves a little bit from Trump, or like get like skeptical, like, oh, where's the economy stuff? You know, that's never what I wanted. All the things that Trump's doing is actually what I wanted, was to fight communism. He's not openly saying that, but he's doing all the moves that I would actually want from a president to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's funny because like I feel like he's letting down a lot of the normie Republicans and MAGA people, but actually people that know what the bigger problem is are more, I guess, hopeful with what he's doing, especially worldwide.
Well, and even with the things where I think we're being let down, I think there's a tactic.
They're
like Trump is playing. I don't necessarily think every single one of his decisions is completely perfect, and he's in every situation, even ones where I think he actually is doing something that I wouldn't really be in favor of. Is like his 7D chess. I can't think of anything off the top in my head, but like, my point that I'm getting at is like, even if you could point to something that I would say, yeah, I'm not in favor of that, such as like maybe the Epstein files not having been released or whatever, which people are still frustrated about, and I'd love to see them released. If we have like a global, if we have the ability to identify a list of 100 pedophiles that are in high positions in our government and business in the United States of America, I'd love to have them out so we could take care of business, right?
If it destroyed America, would you want that?
How could it destroy America to arrest people who are criminals?
No, if let's just say not that, but if it did destroy America, would
how could it destroy America?
Not how. I'll answer that after you answer the first question. If it destroyed America, would you do it?
I mean, that's a tough question. Like, do you allow evil to go on continuing in order to stop
if it destroyed America,
being molested?
Yeah. So your answer would be yes.
I can't, like, I cannot answer that question without, like, I need more information.
No, what do you mean? You can't. The answer should be yes. Would you destroy America if it meant saving and protecting those kids? Even if the premise was to destroy.
Well, so here's the question, right? Like, so destroying America, it's not simple calculus, right? Because of the fact that there's a national impact, there's a worldwide impact of America existing, and so you have to calculate.
If it completely destroyed America's moral authority, integrity, and destroyed the entire set of institutions all the way from right and left. And actually literally rotted America. Like, it was so bad that no one could trust America and everyone lost faith as a leadership. Would that be worth releasing the Epstein files?
So one of the things that I'll say is, like, I just don't know that it's possible for it to do that.
I think obviously then you'd want that released, because you're already starting from the premise that you believe that it wouldn't. But if you thought it did.
Well, I have a hard time with you when you get into such a difficult hypothetical. And I had this conversation.
It's not difficult. That's actually pretty simple.
No, it's not, because it's like the whole system of the world, what's going on.
It's challenging your world. It's challenging your worldview.
It's not that it's challenging my worldview. It's
it is. No one's going to think otherwhy. You can't sit there. It's so easy to virtue say no. It's easy to virtue signal. No, how am I wrong? It's easy to virtue signal.
I'm saying that
we need to release these.
But then it's really challenging for me to tell you what I would do in a hypothetical that's not here. And I had this conversation with my wife, is like, a lot of times I have ideas about what I would do if I were in that situation. And then I'm in that situation and I realize I don't behave like, when I'm thinking about what I would do in that situation, hypothetically, I always have I think much higher, in a sense, I would say a much higher view of myself than I actually
Well,
ultimately
then
am.
let
And
me give
when
you
I'm
details there.
actually in the situation
It,
and like going through it and thinking about all the consequences in the midst of going through it, I might make a different decision than I would say out front. Like, if you were to tell me that we could get justice for, tens of thousands of children who have been molested by horrible billionaires, I would say let's roast them. To hell with the consequences. But in reality, I don't know if that's actually what I would do.
yeah, because let's just say hypothetically, Trump was on there, Bill Clinton was on there, Elon. Let's just say all the top people that everyone looked up to, business leaders, stocks would plummet. No one would lose. Everyone would lose faith with the American government, and they would, right? So if you had government officials all the way to the top, you would lose faith completely with the American system. And then countries around the world would use it as a cudgel to destroy America. In that situation, would you release it if you knew, you looked at it and you went, "Oh, damn, this will destroy us. We will know it's going to take us a century to get back to where we were or to have footing." Would you do that?
Yeah, I'd have a hard time doing that.
Yeah, hey, at least, and imagine if, let's just say Trump's not on it. Let's say Trump's not on it, but that's his decision.
I can only imagine that if Trump was on it, the Democrats would have released it.
Well, what if Trump? Okay, what if Trump's facing,
or at least leaked that portion?
But if Trump is facing the same consequence, let's just say he's not on it, but he knows that it would destroy America, would he release it?
Probably no. I don't think he would. So, yeah. But this is like second though. Like we keep getting. I feel like we keep getting distracted on sub points, because. Yeah, now I've lost my train of thought, because like I was bringing this up as like ultimately Trump is doing a lot of good things, and there are only like even if you want to talk about some of the things that he's doing that aren't good, ultimately the big picture is that he's doing a lot more good than negative. I think that's where I was getting at, and I was just saying, but it was another point that I was going to make, and I got distracted. We got distracted with this because like. I do, generally speaking, agree with what he's doing, but there are some things that I would I'm not like. I don't love the idea of increasing the national debt, but I think this might have been part of what I was getting at. Is like, so like with the one big beautiful bill, right, which did a lot of good things, but I'm gonna get roasted on the right for this, but I don't care, I guess. Like, so there is a reality that part of what happened in that bill is a reduction in some funds that go to fund rural hospitals, right? This is what Susan Collins was trying to push back against. And I think like there's a couple things to come out. Like, one, there's a rural hospital that's talking about how they're going to significantly scale back. There are some that are closing, but Northern Lights, I think, in Bangor is going to be scaling back how many people they have there, how many people they can take in, and a bunch of things like that. Because in part, two things I'm going to say is, one is in part as a result of the one big beautiful bill, but also because they just were not doing well financially anyway, right? The reality is this part has nothing to do with the one big beautiful bill, though they're blaming the one big beautiful bill, which is that they were losing they lost $150 million last year, right? Is the number. So like, that's not sustainable, right? So like, that has nothing to do with Trump. They can't blame Trump for that. However, there is a reality that in the one big beautiful bill, they did reduce the amount of money that's going to rural hospitals, which does impact that organization. Again, they weren't going to make it anyway, I don't believe. Anyway, so I'm kind of jumping around here a little bit.
But
the point that I don't like about my concern they have with the one big beautiful bill actually is primarily the potential increase in the national deficit of $5 trillion. Mm-hmm. That is very concerning to me. But what's more concerning, and I do think that is something that we need to figure out how to address at some point, but we can't address it if we don't win in 2026. And that's where, when I look at what Trump is doing, and I say that I think he's playing calculus, and he's saying, how do we set ourselves up to win in 2026? Well, if we have all these problems economically this year, in the first year of my presidency, we don't have enough control of the House, we don't have enough control of the Senate, we're not going to be able to permanently enshrine any of the things that he's done. At this point, the vast majority of what he's done is all through executive order. It's all through using his power is in the executive branch, and that will not carry on beyond his term unless we're able to get a stronger hold in the House, a stronger hold in the Senate. And the only way to do that is to make people realize how good Trump's presidency is, which means we need to help the economy. And in order to help the economy, we need to cut taxes and we need to cut some spending, but ultimately we need to cut taxes, which will put us in a position where we might potentially increase the national deficit. So I don't like it, but as long as and there are other elements, but economics is a big part of it. And
yeah, so you have the standard Republican position on it.
Well, I don't know if that's true.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just
no. I'm just not sure that that's the standard Republican.
What would be
position.
What would be different? What would separate that from the standard Republican position?
I don't. Standard Republican is a term I don't really completely understand, because you've got a lot of people on the Republican side that don't seem to care. They'll talking point say they care about the national debt when the Democrats are in charge. I think that's a standard Republican, is to be like, oh, the Democrats are overspending, and then the Republicans get in there and they continue overspending, but they spend on military instead of social welfare programs.
So if we were going to lose in 2026, and it was obvious, and things were going to go bad, and we're going to start falling under the rule of Democrat socialists, and they're starting to gain ground, would you support Trump running for a third term? And the option was, if he doesn't run, we're going to lose, and they're going to take it over. And we look like UK and Europe, right? Like they're just going to open the gates, flood us with migrants. They're going to have Democrat rule, single party rule. You're not going to win it. If you could see the writing on the wall, it was coming. Would you support Trump running for a third term if it meant violating the Constitution, or I guess not Constitution, but the law that was based around it?
It was an amendment to the Constitution.
Okay, the amendment.
It is law. So it is a constitutional law. It is not allowed. He cannot run for a third term unless there is a constitutional amendment. And I would not support him going against that. I think the Constitution, we're in a sticky situation, because the Constitution was written for a religious and a moral people, and we've largely abandoned that. A significant portion of America has walked away from both the religious up here in the Northeast in particular, and then the moral nationally. We were largely abandoning those two things, and the Constitution doesn't work if you don't have a religious and a moral people. And there's a couple of things, like Trump is not young. Like the fact that he's still able to function at the level that he's functioning at right now is a miracle. Like even if you could make an argument for it being better than letting the Democrat socialists take over, he's still really old. And I don't think, he's in great shape for his age, and he's doing a fantastic job at the moment. But I don't know that would be a wise plan. I also think it's cowardice. I think we can have other people carry the torch. I think there are other sharp people in our movement. We're not the Democrats. We don't have a short bench. We have a deep bench. We have a number of people that are really strong on our side, from J.D. Vance to Vivek Ramaswamy, and there are others. Those are two of my favorites. Tulsi's great. Don't 100% trust Tulsi, but I do think that we have other options that can win. Like if we're worried about that, I think that Trump should use absolutely all of his energy to rally behind these other people, to campaign with them, to keep the Trump rally power, but in an effort to get a J.D. Vance elected. So
let's just say you have cities that start voting in communists, and they're going full. They're just using the Democratic process, which is legal, to just start like going full on commie, locking down and creating strongholds in New York City, the Northeast, the West Coast. Does Trump have the moral authority to intervene?
Not under our
So we have
our
to.
legal
So we
system.
can't.
No.
Yeah. So would you be opposed to him violating that in order to defeat the Marxists, or would he be bound to the Constitution just out
I
of
think
principle?
so. Like, here's the problem, right? Like, once you start violating the Constitution, you open the door for deeper, worse violations of the Constitution in the future.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be very, very careful about that, right? I don't think like these systems can work and they can sustain themselves. I think these eventually fall apart and fall into the ocean if we allow them to. I don't think that it would be wise to, like, it depends on what's happening, right? If there's like a ton of crime going on, is it unconstitutional for Trump, for instance, to send in the National Guard to protect the people of the United States of America, the citizens that he is responsible for? Is it unconstitutional for him to do that? No, it's not unconstitutional for him to do that. There are ways as the president that you can intervene to some degree in those situations in a way which is constitutional. I don't think he should go outside of constitutional powers to do that if he's violating. I mean, we are the United States of America. We are not America, right? Like, so we have a group of states that have are able to have separate laws, and if those laws are in violation of the Constitution, it's not up to Trump; it's up to the Supreme Court to determine that. And if they determine that, and they say that Trump has the authority to go in and address issues that are going on in those places, or whatever it is, then that's how that process works. Like, Trump unilaterally doing things that fall outside the Constitution, I think, is a dangerous path. And who knows, like, where things could get in the future, but I would not support that.
Do you think that he's done anything that goes outside of that?
I mean, I think some of his executive orders fall outside, but he's still pursuing those executive orders through legal process. And so they get challenged, and the ones that are unconstitutional, which is extremely rare, by the way, most of his executive orders get upheld by the courts. But the ones that are let down by the courts, he submits. Or he tries to find another loophole if he believes that there is an opportunity to move forward. Like with tariffs, he's on his second attempt with tariffs. He's kept them in place, but the first go round went to the courts, and it was determined that they were unconstitutional. And so he used a different law as a means to keep the tariffs in place. And I'm pro tariff, but I'm also pro Constitution. So I'm thankful that he is following the constitutional process. And that's one of the things that these people like get upset about him, going above and beyond what he's legally allowed to do. He really isn't. He's very cautious and careful in all reality behind closed doors with the lawyers and how he's drafting all these things up. And I think that it's all the myth of the leftists that suggests that he's not doing things on the up and up, because he largely is. I'm not saying he's perfect. There are probably some things, but I can't think of any. I think he's mostly using his constitutional authority appropriately.
So if let's just say New York voted for a communist, and then they started enacting like massive amounts of rent control, just going full on communist, we had no way to do it, because the whole process of the whole doctrine of democratic socialism is to get communism or the revolution through a democratic process instead of having the violent revolution. Like that's like the doctrine of democratic socialism. So it's to achieve communism through the voting process of democracy within a capitalist / democratic country. If they started doing that and then just voting in pretty much the erasure of the Constitution, would you have to adhere to it and just say, well, out of principle, we are going to lose the Constitution and we're bound by that due to the Constitution? Does that make sense?
No.
Okay, so you can technically just vote the Constitution away, right?
Sure. Like what one of the other things that is built into our Constitution is the reality that if our government gets too oppressive, we have a calling essentially to overthrow it,
to violate the Constitution.
No, not to violate the Constitution, to overthrow an oppressive government.
But that could be violating the Constitution.
I mean, if they change the Constitution, sure, you can make that argument. I mean, there is a point where we need to throw down, right? Like there could come to a point if America there is a degree.
Not so much throwing down, but like how much, like at what point, like I don't know.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
So in your scenario, part of what doesn't make sense, right, is that Mamdani, for instance, because we'll use him because he's the
he's in the north. He's part of our bloc.
He's trying to take over New York City, right?
Yeah, if
he violates the Constitution, even if he becomes governor of New York and he tries to get laws changed in New York, those laws are still submitted and beneath the protections that exist in the U.S. Constitution.
Is rent control unconstitutional?
I don't know. In our argument, I mean, it's been allowed. So I would assume that if the reason, I mean, it exists in Portland. If it was not constitutional, it would not exist. There is nothing specific in the Constitution that prohibits rent control.
Yeah, and then the government can go buy up all the buildings, where as long as the people vote on that. And then people can create random laws like, oh, if your building's empty, we're going to fine you $10,000. If you do this, and then the government can actually go and seize it. If they start achieving what their goal is, and they find ways that are to work like around the Constitution to do so, or at least get dangerously close, do you just have to accept it?
No.
Out of principle. What do you mean no? Like if they're doing it. Right. Okay. So
I'm saying the people don't have to accept it. So like there's a point, right? There is a point down the way. I don't think we've reached it yet, where the structures fail us, to quote The Dark Knight Rises. But there is a point where I think he makes the point. So the Lieutenant Gordon in the movie The Dark Knight Rises, he's basically saying that there's a point far out there where the structures begin to fail you, and the rules end up becoming shackles, keeping you down in order to let the criminals get away. Right. That's essentially what he's talking about. There is a degree that that we could reach a point where the power that they've taken, along with the Constitution being manipulated and abused, essentially, could lead to a scenario in which America becomes oppressive. And again, like basically built into our Constitution. My understanding is I can't cite the place in particular, but there is a point, a recommendation there that we need to overthrow any oppressive government. We need. Now, there are some people on the crazy right that say that the only option is revolution. I don't think we're there yet. I think we're hopefully far away from there. But there is a point where I think that is something that would have to happen. And we talk about the fact that we're in this ideological war here, and it's cold civil war here in America, but it might not stay cold, is the short version.
Yeah.
And there may come a point where it needs to not be cold. Because even right now it's hard to like a world in which they're taking healthy children and taking them to hospitals and cutting parts of them off. Like, how do we allow that to happen? How do we allow some of these atrocities to happen?
What about non-citizens voting in local elections? How many states do we have now that allow that legally by passing law? 7, 8?
What do you have?
Okay, so like Los Angeles,
they can vote in local elections. They can't
so
vote
like
in
city council. No, but that's huge though. Like
I know it is.
So instead of going from the top down, in Colorado, New York, Vermont, California, I think Washington, Oregon, they have towns now where you can literally have non-citizens, foreigners, vote for your local elections. Like Los Angeles allows that. Like, how is that? Like, and here's the problem: is that this is the part of the playbook of the Democrat Socialists is to have a new voting bloc that offsets the local voting bloc. If you can start taking over and putting yourself in positions of power, like I think Vermont, Burlington, and I know at least 3 major cities in Vermont. You cannot actually not get power if you're a Republican, because now foreigners can actually offset your voting power. Like, how is that even, like, how are we even at that point? That's insane to me.
No, it is.
Right? And we're not even talking illegal, or the fact that they make up census data, which allows them to have more votes, right? But like Los Angeles, you can literally, like, Los Angeles is Colorado town. I mean, this is insane, especially in the Northeast. So like the Northeast, you have multiple towns that you can legally now vote. And did you know that they have 16-year-olds high school kids that can vote in some of these elections for school board and city council and on referendums? So like Vermont, I think last year just passed their first town that has non-citizens and high school kids can.
Yeah.
Like that's freaking insane, man. And so what they're going to do is they're going to seize power through the whole point of Democrat socialism is to seize power, get to the point where you have no power. You can't vote yourself.
You're very black-pilled, sir.
No, well,
you got to project hope.
No, but I point these things out. I think the problem is that people on our side, they don't even realize they're fighting a battle, and it's frustrating to watch them sit there and go, well, we'll just confront them and write really well-worded arguments against their position. And meanwhile, they're going around seizing power, throughout the world. And so, I don't know. It's frustrating that I can't foresee that if I was sitting in a town and they're trying to pass a law that allows non-citizens and high school kids to vote in the local elections, and I know that I'm going to ultimately lose 100% power on my side, that I would just allow that to happen. But you're having cities.
How do you stop it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Right. And so like this is where I think I really don't know like what the long-term picture looks like, but I think that we need to win nationally and nationally, and I think we can still win here in the state of Maine. I think there's hope in 2026 at a couple of different levels, and we need to get out there and do what we can, and hopefully people at home can help. But because we need to do everything that we can to get the right people elected, because if we can get control of the education system, right, then we can help stop this indoctrination and turn the tide. That's kind of where I see the future. A big part of the future lying is there. But I mean, it's definitely like it's a crazy world that we live in. Because I remember I was watching Seinfeld recently, and there was an episode where what's her name there? Why can't I remember her? Oh yeah, Elaine is dating a communist, and like just about everybody, when they find out he's a communist, they're all upset, right? And like that's just like 30 years ago. Like the vast majority of people recognize the ills of communism. And like we thought we beat communism years ago, and I actually had a conversation with a good friend of mine, pastor, about like the rise of socialism and communism in our country right before COVID hit, or around the time COVID hit. And he was like, oh, my parents have been worried about that for years. And he was like rolling his eyes as though, oh, this isn't really a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's partly, but there's this slow creep that's been happening again, and it moved forward aggressively during COVID. But ultimately, this is what we're up against. But I also think that like one of the challenges of democracy in general is that like as people, I think democracy's like end result is socialism, which ends up devolving into something like fascism or communism. I think that like ultimately people vote in favor of what they think is going to help them in the short term, and that ends up leading to long-term devastating consequences. So I don't know. I think at some point every society falls apart. I mean, it happened to Rome. It happened to every other major society before it. At some point, America will fall. My hope is to hold it off as long as possible.
But you're missing what happened. So before Rome actually fell, they had that huge period after democracy fell, right?
Right.
So you had the period where democracy was falling apart, like you're saying, and then what happened was an emperor took place, and they weren't supposed to have that, but then they just seized power, and they were like, okay, it's falling apart. it's become too corrupt. And then pretty much quote unquote the strong man came forward and just said, I'm just taking power, and no one could stop him. And
Right.
that's where I feel like we're kind of in society, is that we're in that phase
We,
where
we are in the exact same. If you look at, I haven't listened beyond this, but there's a good podcast called The History of Rome, and so I was listening to that, and I was realizing that the point in which Julius Caesar came to be is the point in which we're at right
Yeah.
now. It's this rise in populism where the people, as you said, they want a strong leader. And Trump is that, and that's why people love him. Is he's a strong leader. He's loved by the people. He's always been loved here in America, until he ran for politics, and then some people decided they hated him. But largely, he's been loved here in America. And we, if we could, I think people, I don't think, I know that people would want him to run again. If it was possible for him to run again, if we could do a constitutional amendment, I would say a third of our country would probably vote in favor of it.
If you had to pick, what if you, okay, if you knew that the country, like you were saying, it evolves or just changes, right? It's just a natural path of democracy, and you have a choice: communism, fascism, or some sort of like president emperor. What would you pick?
I mean, I'm not.
Let's just say,
it's fine. I have no problem answering. I think I would be okay. I don't believe that democracy is necessarily a better form of government in every way. I don't have a problem with a monarchy. We have good kings and bad kings, and ultimately, as a Christian, I have a king in heaven, he set up I mean, he didn't create kingdoms, but like that's a whole separate issue. But there were good kings and bad kings. I think a democratic system in some ways may have some good beginnings, but tends to lead in a direction where at some point power becomes entrenched in the bureaucracy, and it doesn't really matter who gets elected because they have to fight with the bureaucrats. Even if you get like the right person elected, they've got so much struggle against all of the entrenched bureaucrats, the career politicians, and this, that, and the other thing. And you really, I mean, here's a case where Donald Trump won this dramatic victory in 2024, and is not able to implement any of his strategy in terms of actual law. He's having to use executive orders because the other people who were elected will not stand with him and vote in favor of his agenda, which is the agenda for which the American people elected him. And so this is the challenge of bureaucracy. Now, it was in a sense intentionally designed this way by the founding fathers, right? They didn't want the government to be able to move quickly and do things quickly. They wanted it entrenched so it couldn't enact laws. But what they didn't foresee, in my opinion, is the fact that over time there would be this slow creep to the point where, yes, now we're having trouble getting anything done, but we've already done so much damage and we can't undo it. Because of the way that the Constitution is written. Kings, if you have a king, that doesn't work that way. They make the laws, they make royal decrees, right? They can change things on the fly. Now, there are huge pros and cons to that, right? Like, I think like a lot of the things that Trump wants to do, and that if he had the power to do, he would just do. Like, you could immediately end DEI, you could immediately end child mutilations nationally. You could do a lot of other things that I think would be incredibly beneficial for our society that he can't do because he doesn't have that power and that authority that a king would have. It's like, and I think I would be okay with him. From what I see of him as a leader, I'd be okay with him as a king if we were in a world with kingdoms. The flip side is, like, if Joe Biden were the one who had become the king or somebody like that, well, geez, that's really, really, really awful for a really long period of time, right? So, like, I'm not arguing for kingdoms, but I am saying that, like, if you give me a choice between, as they put it, this is a really long answer, I know, but in the movie Braveheart, not William Wallace, what is his name? Benjamin Martin says, "Tell me why I should trade one tyrant 3,000 miles away for 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away." And he says, "An elected legislature can trample a man's rights as easily as a king can." And so, like, if I have to choose between the swamp that's full of Democrat socialists and King Trump, Hey, have fun with this, liberals. If you ever see this, I would choose. I would choose King Trump. Like, this is the reality. Is like this. There's this with all these like no kings things that they're running around marching with. Like, kings weren't the problem. The fact that there were kings actually wasn't a problem for a significant portion of the time. Like, people in Russia loved the czar for a long period of time, right? What happens is people don't like bad rulers, and when they get a bad ruler, it's like, oh, kings are evil. It's not that kings are evil. It's that some kings are evil. It's not that white people are evil. It's that some white people were evil. And it's really that some people with power manipulate and use that power over against other people. And it just so happens that many of those people that whites were just more effective at being rulers over big, large swaths of land. They were better at imperialism. It wasn't that other people weren't trying to do imperialism. It was that they just weren't, I guess, weren't as good at building their empire for whatever reason. Anyway, just all these factors. But like, I don't think kings are inherently bad, I guess is the point. And I don't think democracy is inherently good. If you give me a bad democracy and versus a good king, I'm going to take a good king.
Yeah. If we had a two-party system and we could remove the Democrats, would you like to replace them with libertarians? Versus.
I mean, that would, if that's the choice, I would take it any day of the week. I mean, the Democrat Party, again, they're not the Democrat Party of old. They're
not at all.
I mean, AOC, Bernie, Mamdani, right? These people have lost their minds.
Yeah, it's funny to see them, like, they praise Janet Mills, right? When Janet Mills is there, but the moment she's starting to even talk about running, like, people right now on leftist Reddit are going berserk over her talking about running because she's not far enough left. They want Plattner bad. They want Plattner in there.
Yeah.
I mean, who would you vote for, Janet Mills or Graham Plattner?
What are my other options?
No. What if you only had those two to vote? Who would you pick? That is one of the worst questions in the world. I was just reading up on.
I feel like those girls on the video you said earlier. Can I just not answer? Like,
yeah. Like, who do you pick?
I mean, the truth is like, Janet Mills is a little bit better than them. So if you were like, who do I have to choose, and I have to choose between them, I would choose Janet Mills. Like, if you had to choose, tell me I had to pick some Democrat to be in control of something really big, and it was somebody in the Senate, I would say Fetterman. Do I want Fetterman? No, but he actually talked. Well, because he says some things that make sense. Like, he once he woke up from his coma, he realized, oh wow, these guys are kind of crazy. Maybe I shouldn't be fully aligned with them.
Living in the Northeast. Imagine if Shenna Bellows wins, Graham Plattner wins, you have Bernie Sanders in Vermont, and Mamdani wins New York. And then we keep Mayor Wu and the other socialists in Boston or in Massachusetts. The Northeast actually looks really dire if we all lose this in this coming election.
Oh, yeah. It's frightening.
Yeah. We're talking full on socialist Northeast if all those people win. Full on. You're living through a time that I've never seen in my entire lifetime, or the people older than me. Like, if you have the Northeast get completely locked down by these Democrat socialists, that's wild. It's not going to change. Like, it's going to be an insane ride.
Yeah, it's crazy. What is this? Well, anyway, just something to do with my stupid store. Anyway, it's already wild that we're even in this place where Maine has gone as far as it has, where we have some of the craziest laws of any states in the nation, and yet, again, we're only like 5% more blue than red, and yet
Mhm.
our policies seem to suggest that we're the most blue state in the nation, or not quite, but we're not far behind the likes of, Oregon, Washington State, and California that are the craziest, and Colorado, I think, is pretty bad too. But we're approaching those, so hopefully we can win 2026. Contribute, help in whatever way you can. One of the ways that you can help support the podcast: like, share, subscribe, find the shorts, share them with people. Go to muddywaters.us and buy some merch. Try out our coffee as one of the great ways to support the podcast, and help us win in 2026 and beyond, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I got to get running, but thank you for hanging out and chatting and arguing today, Richard.
Yes.
All right. See you guys all. Tomorrow, who do I have on? Fight Coffee is going to be on tomorrow. So Fight Coffee is an organization based here in Southern Maine that they're trying to sell coffee in order to. So consider buying their coffee too. But anyway, they're trying to sell coffee in order to try and fund ending sex slavery here in America. So there's human trafficking that's happening here in the state of Maine. That we're going to hear the story of why this guy started this organization tomorrow. But basically, that's what it is. So Fight Coffee will be here tomorrow. Anthony will be my guest. So we'll see you all here tomorrow. And then Thursday, we actually have Dominic Pugliaris, who is the owner of Dunegrass Golf Club in Old Orchard, and he's going to be on. He's one of the founders of the Common Sense for Maine PAC. So we're going to have him telling his story. So cool. We'll see you all here the next couple of days.